So a country walked into a bar. All the citizens, the non-citizens, you know, undocumented citizens, overt criminal enterprises, everyone that was in the country at the time, they walked into a bar. They had just come from a boxing gym, from the other joke I didn't finish. But they all decided to come there, and they discovered they'd been teaching American history wrong. They discovered that James Madison and our founders communicated, declassified for them, us not to be entertaining. The words of people from the past pretended that they had free speech, including our founders, which James Madison's the only one we know the name of. We only know the name of James Madison as our founder. That's what I read. We have, see, sickly distinctly our books and our teachers have been taught and to teach, have been influenced from off their campuses of the republic for which we stand, the Campus Marcia system, that came abridged since some ancient times. And where this is not a debatable, it's pretended debatable. And there are collusions with the people, the names of the people, the scientists, and people attacking them. Censoring anyone addressing those collusions with free speech. And right there is where and how we could discern that there is a predicate acts for facts. Oh, I forgot the joke. Please. So they go in there, and then they go into the place, the bar, and they tell them, because they hear this guy is good at solving people's issues. And they go in there, but the guy from the gym is with them, but he doesn't want to work with them any longer. But now he's with him, and he knows. And it turns out he knows the guy, but he owns this big place that could hold the whole country. And they explain to the bartender, you know, while in here, we figure we realize we're all sickly, non-distinctly hurt. We're all sickly, distinctly hurt by a breaching method. We're all sickly, non-distinctly. We can't agree about how to solve it with the other countries and with our own. And can you help us? And the bartender motions for them to look over. And all the other countries were already in the bar together. And then, you know, in other words, America was the last country in the bar. But see, everyone had this breaching method entrenched since before modern countries were born. And so they started seeing that, you know, we're starting to get on the right page. And someone yelled out, let me buy everyone a drink. Or how much is it? Would it be, you know? Because they had everyone brought supplies. And then everyone was like, oh, because right before they had come in, the king of Saudi Arabia, in the joke, he had agreed, you know, okay, we're not in Saudi Arabia. And the bartender had made a good point about the Quran. The Quran says in the beginning of the Quran, per translation of it in English I read, all that matters is if one is going to be honest about the identity of nature, the name of it, as a scientific value. And it says to love the people if they don't agree about it, as long as they're honest. And it says if the people who agree about it too, it obligates them and the people to allow them to disagree with them about anything. Like any mosque, not to pray in any mosque for any reason. It doesn't say all that matters is that someone prays. It says all that matters. And prayer is contemplation, besides that. In other words, it says all that matters is if someone's going to be honest about their name. Because it's part of science here. It's part of not just contemplation, it's part of observation, but we have these observations replaced by syntax that has only been known, entertained as uses of our names A through Z, through United Systems Tactical Ulterior, from the human species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by it. It's generating two eyes across species bodies, so we can discern that it is not us nor them, but nature's body generating it. All exceptions, the exception of nature, are in demonstration slash S of the same thing. And where and how it shows us nature's identity to an extent, and it showed the ancients this. But they were shown more and more they could no longer afford to have the details about the sciences appreciated as they were revealed to be appreciated and are being revealed to be appreciated by nature. But like, for example, why and how there is mercury in the fish, arsenic, plastic, and even in the whole ocean. It is because these are bridge sciences. Beginning of the Old Testament has a part 2. It says only depend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that part and the part that comes before it comes before the part of the tree of life and of knowledge, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. No. This is relative because the Old Testament was written with consciousness that the people that would use their differences while being used remotely using their differences. The people defending the religions and the people attacking them and the exceptions. And although they would have that, members of that, sensing for the hyperform breaching method. Where and how we have heard voices making opinions on the North and the South in the Civil War and wars. They are replacing what our founders communicated. See, they knew, too, our founders, too, just like the religious people, they knew that the people that would present them, they would change and hide and fake what our founders communicated, declassified, by how James Madison's plan and a plural of unnamed founders had to counter-extort people at key locations because of the crazy torture, extortion, and slavery laws and collusions with such, and we used slash S of such that no one even knew the extent of, because no one was even capable of having it. Even though they could be, no one would show it because they themselves didn't know at countries A through Z before religious messengers were born, before right through America's founding until now. The breaching method read what our founders declassified, and it appreciated it before us. We're not supposed to have appreciated even the words of James Madison, leaving out what he declassified about why and how nobody had free speech. A breaching method was using like an algorithm. It had slavery laws only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies distinctly, but sickly non-distinctly. And James Madison detailed about how they knew we were going to come out of those things that nobody wanted collusion slash S with. But everyone was only allowed to, they weren't even allowed to be speaking up about certain things like that against all women, even outside of internationally monitored conversations. Otherwise, that person was sentenced. And it was the difference of their guilt and used by such, or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, international companies, psycho ones. against themselves and against others. Individually grouped and together, the names of humanity through that system's tactabilitarian from the one, Allah and the Trinity and Jesus Christ are about. Juxtapose energy C or C. Consciousness is high, rising/raising. C's tell. Inherent C's tell. Vaccines. I teach those things. So, the nature inside the nature of debate is a our criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence. Uses of Boolean logic and principles of fact-shaping nature our country's A through Z. The right where no one self-values it through you're simultaneously self-valuing, like with black people's white bias, denying anyone just because they have, if it's honest with black people's white bias, it means for correlation relative to that which is deemed science, or in other words, they knew, our founders knew, that they would be replaced. Those unknown founders, they would replace why and how. There was a breaching method that only allowed roles with such. And it was not just the guilt of the countries involved with that. We could observe how it stayed there until now, too. And our own people are screening the breaching method, are screening their motivations by it, too. Because it abused them since they were kids. The names of the people of the sciences, distinctly from ourselves, prevented free speech while they're and getting away with it because of what their uses of databases. They have a torture method too, and that involves with them faking that they had conversations with people that have been planting evidence, like this breaching method uses remotely. Retired police chiefs, their families' intimate ties, judges, prosecutors, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, hundreds of countries at the same time, and the ones in the news at the same time, with the same ones with the campuses and the databases. And the difference of those databases, other intelligence databases. Intelligence is recorded, capacity, demonstrate, confirmed. Foreign and domestic, they pretend people make conspiracy theories. And they change and fake, hide what's actually recorded. Hide how all exceptions come with demonstration /s of the same thing. Not one lawyer honestly perceived what nature was showing, let alone nature and little kids, let alone little kids and everyone at the same time at suburbs, let alone in cities. This is what is, we know. We're supposed to be looking at the screen, not the television screen with the rap video and the people, the big buildings behind it. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. Again, with the torture, extortion, slavery method entrenched. They have a sick, slick game, keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for that, and our role of self-value with that. Because you heard the takes of American history, other than how our founders communicated for us to get it unabridged, not replacing with people for all we knew that the only reason they were there because they were counter-extorted. And that's one of the reasons that's the only reason they were there. They even they had to leave roles with slavery because they couldn't be sentenced. They didn't have free speech. This is not debatable. The only reason it's gotten away with being debated, we can't leave out the names of the people of sciences, their roles. But it's not to make convict them. Apart from everyone else, collusion was anyone leaving out the breaching method. That one discernible with where and how it had conscious use slash S of making, even though everyone was sickly, non-distinctly hurt together, and everyone could all overcome things together. Like when they come this joke, when it comes together. By the way, first they attached me to fake uses of drugs. At Harper Hospital has a whole bunch of people tied to the Leahy family and the Lombardo family who have roles with untimely deaths and confessions on my street and confirmations regarding that on Facebook. Then they took my Facebook pages. The FBI has collusions with a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly involved with Robert Rodriguez and others with the state judicial branch offices, with sexual medical offenders of kids, and with uses of their own differences and of other people's differences. You know how many different kinds of people are involved with the government? They also have that word government involved with the Trantola and Trantola. Collusion of lawyers with collusions with the networks and with the intelligence next to them, as one's next with the next to the state capitol. Their January 6th treatments of the state capitol and Washington D.C. The differences of guilt. They're hiding their roles with both sides of that. Congress was used remotely on a mass scale. They use the right to lie. And how many different titles? Worthless. Where it counts. Get me off of fake conversations with WFSB and the Wethersfield Police when I was a kid, and now as an adult. A bunch of people in the Brit Superior Court, Harper Courts, and the District Court, and their families, increasingly have collusion slash S with people on my street, with people who enter cities, have roles with a bunch of things that were brought up at the same time, including murders, untimely deaths, people involved before the World Trade Center attack, interstates too, with Washington D.C. a number of ways. Like 2 speech class teachers I have, all kinds of medical corruption. And with these databases that no one's allowed to look into. Intercities, a bunch of people with UConn involved with a Violak family and a Justin Kovinskas and a Walters family. Intercities involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, and spots next to Hartford Hospital and people there. Involved with news predicate acts where they use the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie. As collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and an interbranch and foreign at the same time, and news at the same time, with layers of other, including criminal enterprises and terrorists, with the same sequence shifts. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB. See, these are people offensively pretending it's debatable, because then they have to hide how they have the everything that comes before them. Either they make the right or wrong outcome in a case slash S. That's not even discernible to them anymore. They already had themselves used remotely there, here, a location slash S. There's a collusion slash S with a predicate acts with facts method slash S. I'm not a lawyer who denies that replacing what nature communicates with nature is not only itself as criminal insidiousness about black people's rights of eyes. By the way, I had perfect teeth. These people at Hartford Hospital involved with the World Trade Center attack. They were involved with torture before they identity theft, fraud, slander, fake transcripts, fake motivations screening too. Multiple courts are involved personally and professionally with the Lombardo family, with a Leahy family at Hartford Hospital. Fake conversations with me. This Leahy family, I have a conversation with his Brendan Leahy. I believe that's his father too. The guy, another guy there, sick guy. They have a bunch of people, a bunch of courts involved with them, and their families and intimate ties before the World Trade Center attack. They affected confessions to me, requests for help relative to use slash S of location slash S intercities, and with people with foreign and domestic military. With those spots, I'm not saying it was real, but that reported serial killer and that spot and the names next to it of the body dumping spot in West Hartford. That's increasingly collusions with people on my street in parallel who will tell you. Otherwise, they're lying to you. You know, they have recorded roles with syntax with people that for with that syntax and they're speaking about back things, they're repeating fake things and using truth for lies to force more. There child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, brought up at the same time. People involved with the elderly homes from off them, hyper additional collusions there to keep the off them part or those people are other blamed for what it's doing and has done too. We had means to afford things way better than free, and you guys can't speak about a free economy because you guys owe more money. All kinds of scams with Social Security too, and all the programs involved, all kinds of organized crimes. Just with a dozen and a half, and then some guy in Harvard Hospital brought up a Casper family. I never met the coach. There's a coach Casper, and there's a Robert Heimgartner, Czech, who sat next to them involved with they put him there to be collusions with a Czech Casper and a Debbie Gold. Weren't even in my classes. I never had a class. Never saw Czech Casper in a grammar school I went to. He's increasingly brought up by confessions of others to me, tied to a Debbie Gold. Put fake things in databases. Put fake ties to me. Sequence shift. And these are increasingly people tied to a Debbie Gold who have World Trade Center attack. Sequence shift was inside the Ninth Circuit Court itself, and names on both sides of that case. In the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center towers, the morning of the attack. They have and have had collusion slash S also forced for them by others at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Is increasingly foreign and domestic military that has collusions with Wethersfield campuses since I was a kid, and with people that have been planting evidence on all sides of my street from other areas too, like this Robert Rodriguez who brought up the principal child abusers campus to me first, and his prison had collusions forcing that, and with the principal and with the serial killer there, and the people next to that body dumping spot, and the courts associated with him, and their family members, all collusion slash S with the same house slash S, further tied to a Phil Cololo. I only saw him one time driving on a bike, swerving it like a day after someone else was, and repeated one of the names he's involved with sexual and medical offenders of against other natures of organized crimes against little kids. Identity theft, fraud, slanders against me too. A Phil Cololo. Also, reportedly a cousin of one's also reportedly cousins of one's named Scalora, who have roles with Saudi Arabia, with Wethersfield Police, with World Trade Center predicate acts, with other police departments, and linked to police families. There's ones interstates too, and intercities, people with the name O'Brien and DeMoro and a former Mayor Gold. Many people tied to Mayor Gold have been planting evidences at parks and at side entrances of parks with sexual and medical offenders of kids, people involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people that didn't even have classes involved with identity theft, fraud, things, little tricks with acting tied to the predicate acts in the databases at the campuses. You guys should fear God to hide and plot. And these are people also who faked knowing me behind my back since I was a kid. As people involved with home break-ins in the area too, involved with some Mendez police and others involved with the security with the campuses too. You better get them the heck on paper and me off for fake conversations with them. They have intercities involved too, next to the Fox Connecticut News, with a bunch of intelligence there in Hartford, Connecticut, next to the state capitol, all along Route 175. Have roads and Route 3, conjunctions to it, into that, like Hangdog Lane runs into Two Route Highway. Increasingly, people over there Like I only know a Joe DeMar. I saw him around that thing there one time. Some reservoir there. That was to make a fake exception, like I knew that group. That, in other words, a Brian Bonin too has roles with the interagencies, foreign and domestic, with different types of drugs and guns, and roles with the Root Three and the state judicial branch with it, and his neighbors with people with the Board of Education with it, with overt criminal enterprise, private ones. I never saw him on campus in my life. He saw me, I was a complete stranger involved with Weathersfield Pizza House. And Steven Stocko is increasingly involved with wire crimes in the Weathersfield police, identifying theft, fraud, slanders with them, with people within the Britons too. Intercities involved with Weathersfield Pizza House, with Central Connecticut City University, and Steven Stocko involved with sexual and medical offenders over kids on my street, tied to him, tied to abusers of kids, and his roles with wire crimes with Weathersfield police, fake ties, fake nature of ties to me. Increasingly, people tied to a Maria Pizzino. I don't know if they're married or what, but involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. And just two-route highway with multiple courts, family members, involved with a whole bunch of different countries, all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivation screening, and collusions with the cultural rackets, inter and intra-cultural identity theft, fraud, slanders, and the roles of wire crime acts and methods. Weathersfield Police and this Weathersfield Pizza House have wire crime, have fake motivations too. We need to get them on paper because they're further involved with the Board of Education people and neighbors of people on the Board of Education. Further with a Michael Emmett, and he hid this, and it's extended it. It's ongoing too. It's people next to the campuses too, involved with whiting forensics. Increasingly with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, sexual medical offenders of kids. People with a Bob Chase confessed to Phil Clough was involved with this. They have Mr. Judge Napolitano involved too with Fox News. They hid this from him until they changed and faked what was actually typed and what was actually recorded. That thing's confirmed on me too about Facebook. Has a whole bunch of personal and professional roles of people within the Britain Superior Court, Harper Court, and the Connecticut District Court. Involved also with all sides of criminal and civil cases with the same sequences with them, and collusions with terrorists and overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And we have black pupils, whites of eyes to discern this long before me. I don't even have to be a lawyer. You guys are supposed to help me with the law and others properly. Not one person spoke for anyone of any location, honestly, because you guys came through 6 campuses. You were child abused. You were not supposed to have them, let alone with music in the background, pretending other than James Madison is a known founder. Because while they're doing that, they're sensing for the breaching method too. Self-value collusion / S, replacing how there was that founding plan.